Oh, okay. You guys can hear me, right? All right, perfect. Good morning. Oh, you guys are awake. That's nice. All right. So, the title is called, as you can see, it's called You Can Run, But You Can't Hide. How many of us have played hide and go seek? Everyone should raise their hand. This isn't a trick question. Okay. How many of you have played hide and you seem like that one best friend always knows your hiding spot, or you guys run together to that hiding spot? Raise your hand. No? Ain't no one got that? Okay, y'all not telling the truth on this Wednesday morning. How many of you feel that you guys have run away from what God's called you to do? This can be, you're supposed to be obedient. You're supposed to go to class. You're supposed to pass the ball and not be selfish. It can apply in different aspects of life. That's kind of like the story of Jonah. Jonah was very disobedient. Jonah became very angry with God. So Jonah started off, God called Jonah to go to the city of Nineveh because the people of Nineveh were very wicked, as we would say, sinful, doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. And Jonah tells God, I'm not going. I don't want to go because his own Hebrew people would have criticized him for going because Jonah himself knew that God would show the people of Nineveh mercy. Meaning mercy is he will forgive them, he would give them a second chance, which we all know God is a second chance. God, he forgives us even when we make mistakes. But Jonah's like, I'm not doing this, I'm out. So he gets on the boat, he dips out, gets on the sea, he said, I'm gone. All of us have done that where we feel like we ran away from what God has called us to do because we just simply either don't want to do it. Or we're like, oh, I'm not doing this today, I'm not in the mood. Oh, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today, I'm not doing it. Oh, she said something to me today, so I'm not going to listen to what you have to tell me. And the list can go on and on. So when Jonah gets on the boat, a big storm happens. As we all know, the storm was created by God. It was intended by him for a reason. And that's kind of like the story of our life. When we run away into places we're not supposed to be, we end up in a predicament that we shouldn't have been in the first place. But it's our fault because we choose not to listen. So we end up in dark places. Jonah's on the boat with these fishermen. You can go to the next slide for the text, sorry. Just like it said, he fled off towards the city of Tarshish. So he's on this boat, and this storm happens. And the fishermen are like, what's going on? Who's causing this great storm? Who is the reason for this havoc? And Jonah has to admit that it's my fault. It's all my fault because I disobeyed God. I ran away from what he wanted me to do. So the fishermen kind of go through this hard time because they don't want to throw him over because they don't want to make their gods upset. So you see the stubbornness of Jonah and the fishermen on this boat. In the end, they have to throw Jonah over, and that's the story of he gets swallowed by a whale, or the biblical context said he gets swallowed by a great fish because that's the only way the storm can stop. That's kind of how our lives go. Only way we can stop destruction from happening ourselves is if we listen and if we obey. It's the same thing. It's just like with a coach. If your coach tells you to go out, make this play, don't do nothing else, do what I'm telling you to do. Many of us athletes, myself included, will go out and be like, okay, he don't know what he's talking about. I see something different, so I'm going to go out there and do something different. And we go out there, we do something different, then another team scores. It's a second left on the clock, now you're down by 5. And you're sitting there like, well, I know I'm going to the bench. So you just go ahead and you walk over and you sit down because you know you didn't do what you were supposed to be doing. And that's exactly what Jonah did. When he got on that boat, he knew he wasn't supposed to be there, but just because of his own self-pride, he was just like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not going to talk to these people in Nineveh about their pagan worship because I know you're going to forgive them anyway, so why would I waste my time on something I feel like you're automatically going to forgive them for doing in the first place? So once he gets thrown over into the boat, in verse 17, as you can see, he sits there and then he prays for 3 days and 3 nights. That's us. When we get stuck, now we want to turn to God. Now we want to pray. Just like for me, for instance, my aunt passed back in December. And I was pretty angry, actually. And I kind of ran away from God. I was like, I'm going to be straight up with you guys. I was like, I'm not feeling you right now. You done made me angry. We're not friends. We're not cool. I haven't looked at my Bible in 3 months. I was just like, I'm not doing this with you. I was like, this is the second Christmas that my family has lost somebody. How can I look to you for peace when you cause me destruction? Some of you all may think I'm a little crazy for thinking like that, but it's just the truth. When life circumstances happen, you sometimes have to sink in order to look back up. Let me break it down one more time. Sometimes God has to put you in a very dark place for you to realize where you need to be. And that dark place may strip you of friendships. It may strip you of financial stability. You may have to fail a class. You may have to go through a relationship. Maybe some of you that are married, you may have to go through some hard times in your marriage while you're in college. And you're like, I don't know why I'm here. You're here because you don't listen. You're here because you're not wise, and most of us think we're wise. We think we know everything because we've been through 3 years of college. That means you're just educated. That doesn't make you wise. Education does not make us wise. That just makes us book smart. Common sense and book smarts aren't the same thing. Not the same thing. Just like street smarts and book smarts are most definitely not the same thing. And it's funny because Jonah sits there and he prays this prayer. And it's so funny to me how when we get stuck, that's when we want to pray. We don't pray in the time of good when God is blessing us. Maybe he gave you a new job. Maybe you got an A on this exam you studied hard for. Maybe you had 15 points in your last game or however anyone else's sports work. I'm not good with other sports besides mine. And you're like, yeah, life is going good. Everything's going great. So I'm good right now. Everything chill. When my aunt died, I was just like, okay, this is where I'm at. And you see yourself looking up like, God's like, you need me, let me come in. But Jonah at first was like, I'm not finna listen to you. I don't want to do this. I'm not going over here to do what you want me to do. I'm always do what I want to do because it's easy to do what we want to do because of our human nature. It's easy to listen to yourself. It's easy to listen to friends, but you can't listen to friends that got the same amount of level of wisdom as you because there's no growth in that. There's no next step. If I'm talking to my best friend and she know me, she's going to tell me what I want to hear because she knows what I need to hear. And sometimes that's not always a good thing. Jonah needed to hear that you are out of pocket, as I say. That's my favorite term. You are out of pocket. You're running away from God, and God's going to make you run back to him. That's why Jonah was swallowed up. You're being disobedient. So he's in the well 3 days, 3 nights, just praying. Finally, at the end of chapter 2, going into Jonah 3, God releases him out. And he tells Jonah again, go act what I told you. Go be obedient. Go to the people of Nineveh. Okay. So he does this. And he goes to Nineveh. He preaches to the people of Nineveh. He warns them about the worship. And the storyline of Jonah 3 is funny because God does end up forgiving those people. He ends up showing them mercy in the end. And Jonah becomes very angry. Very angry. He was like, you brought me through this storm. You asked me to do this. And now you're going to forgive the people. How? How does that work? And it reminds me of even in your families, God asks you to be the bigger person. But you don't want to be the bigger person because you're still angry at that person. So you choose to stay angry. And most people say, one of my mentors always telling me, hurt people hurt people. And it's true because if I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. That's just how I am. My good friends know that if I really don't want to do something, I just won't do it. It's not right, but it's kind of like Jonah. He was angry at God because God showed mercy on those wicked people. He was like, how are you going to show mercy to people that sinned against you? And God tells him later on, why wouldn't I when you disobeyed me 2 chapters ago? That's like us when we talk about our friends. She's wrong. I don't believe her. Better yet, let me use this story. Girlfriend, boyfriend. Girls, most of the time we always think we're right, because I know I do. And then you got your boy, you're not right. And then you ask your girlfriend, the boyfriend asks the girlfriend to forgive them. And the girl like, I ain't forgiving you. That, and the girl, like, I'm not forgiving you for that. I don't care. I'm right no matter what. And that's kind of how Jonah felt with God. Like, how are you going to forgive these people when they sinned against you? And he was just like, I forgave you when you disobeyed me. You fled off into another direction. We could have avoided all of this if you just would have did what I asked you to do in the first place. And it reminds me of us in college. A lot of times, especially in sports, we're asked to be maybe leaders, or we're asked to be communicators, or your teammates depend on you and you shy from that because of your own selfishness in a sense. And everyone's like, I'm not a selfish person. You may not think you're a selfish person, but you probably are. Because I have my selfish ways. I'm not perfect. I perfectly fine with admitting to that. And just like Jonah's like, I'm running away from this. And sometimes we run away because we don't want to face our own problems. I'm going to do it one more time. Sometimes we run away because we don't want to look in the mirror and say, I too have a problem with some things in my life. Versus me right now, my problem is that I have become a little angry with God because I don't think it's fair for what's happened in my personal life. Simple. Sometimes when people pass, you second guess. So you disobey. You don't listen. You turn your back. But then you feel like you're really alone because man cannot replace the comfort that God gives you in those rough times. That's something I had to really learn the hard way because everyone wants to say, well, my boyfriend makes me happy. My teammates make me happy. Shopping, yay, stress relief, perfect. But then you still feel empty by the end of the day because you're just like, I don't know what it is. It's something in me that's not complete. And maybe it's you lack self-confidence. Maybe that you are being disobedient. So God's going to keep pulling you back that other direction. Let me be clear. God has no problem with you. He has a problem with you disobeying, but he's going to let you keep doing it until you wake up and realize you don't need to be doing it. So he's going to say, okay, you want to keep going over there? God going to sit there and watch just like this. Okay, let me sprinkle a little trial, a little test. You don't want to listen? Let me make your life a little harder. I'm going to make you listen. Let me make you broke. That's bad for humans. When we broke, we just feel like, whew, I ain't got no money. I can't buy nothing. I can't even buy me a big chicken from McDonald's. You know, I can't do nothing. Like, I can't even buy me $1 sandwich. I'm broke. And you're just like, God was like, well, if you listen and you hear me clearly, then everything else will align. And Jonah was just not, he was not feeling it. He became so, I laughed every time I read this over and over again. And I called my dad. I was like, Dad, Jonah was furious. He's like, what do you mean? Jonah was angry because he forgave those people. And I had a hard time with it because God forgives us even when we make mistakes we shouldn't make. Even when you made the mistake, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and you do it again. And God was just like, well, Jonah was just you. He was you. He's all of us in a sense because we run away from what God calls us to be, to go do what we want to do. But then when we're in that place, we feel like, why isn't this enough? For instance, we all pick majors, right? You got to do it because you're in college. Some of us have picked biblical studies, education, athletic training, exercise, science, business, and the list goes on. But you may get into that job and feel like, why did I do this? I don't even like math. I don't even like working with people. And it may have been the time because you may have been confused and the other things that take place in college, or it could have been you just weren't listening. Maybe you were supposed to be a biblical studies major, and because the financial outcome may not look as big as someone that becomes a nurse or someone becomes an educator and then goes and become a professor, you're like, okay, God, I can do that part-time. I'm going to make my money full-time over here, and we can pursue your ministry a little bit later. And God's like, okay, I'm just going to make you miserable. It's just that easy. I'm just going to make you miserable. And it's kind of like Jonah. He ran away. Now he's stuck in a great fish. Who would like to be stuck inside a fish? I know that's a horrible smell. Oh. And you sitting there praying like, God, I know I've been bad, but just get me out of this. And he's like, okay, I'm going to let you sit. I'm going to let you sit in this fish for not a day, not a month, but maybe some years. See, Jonah's was only 3 days. But more than likely, ours will be a couple of years when we're disobedient. Because it won't be that you was disobedient one time. You've been disobedient multiple times in a row. And we'll say, well, God, I do listen. I just shifted to what I like to hear. And he looked at me like, you're not listening. You got selective hearing. Like most people say, females say men have selective hearing. It's the same thing. I bet you don't. I bet you don't. It's funny, though, because when we start to disobey, we block our own blessings. And everyone's just like, that's not true. Think about it. When you haven't did what you were supposed to do, like if you don't study for an exam at all, sometimes you do pass. I've been a product of that. And sometimes you take a mean L, and you sitting in class like, it's April. We only got 3 weeks left. Dude, I just took a F on this exam, man. And they asked you, did you study? No, you didn't prepare. And same thing with Jonah was prepared. He was actually very prepared. He just chose not to do it. He chose to run away. He chose not to be the person God called him to be. And most of the time when you choose to do your secular world work and not God's work, that other work will be miserable for you because you're not including God first. You're not keeping God first at the head front of your life. So when you make God the bottom, he's going to make you feel like the bottom. You can't expect to fulfill his requirement when you put him at the back burner. It doesn't work like that. Just in your relationships, if there's no substance, there's no growth. It stays flat. What do I mean by substance? Okay, let me answer the question. If all you base your relationship off is physical attraction and sexual attraction, there's no growth. So when you're disobedient in that term and you run off from what God is telling you to do, invest time into me, invest time into yourself, love yourself first before you can love somebody else, there's no growth. That's it. How are you going to love someone else if you don't even like what you look like in the mirror? That's all I'm saying. It's deep. Oh, good. And see, what's so amazing about God is that he continually gives second chances. Because when he speaks Jonah back out, he allowed him to go preach to the people of Nineveh and talk about the pagan worship and talk about the things they needed to work on. But still, Jonah deep down really didn't want to do it because he knew God would forgive them. And he says in Jonah 4, how can you be angry with me? How can you be angry with God when he supplies you basically with everything you need? So he seems to do the same thing for anyone else. And that's kind of how I feel with the situation with my aunt passing. I was like, yeah, God, I know you provide me with everything I need. But this time I think you failed. I've said it. I mean, I'm not perfect. You shouldn't say it, but it's fine. I'm human. I was like, I think you failed this time. She obeyed you. She followed your command. That morning, the day after my mother passed, the day after my aunt passed, I called my mom. And my mom was like, your last thing your aunt said, because she was real jittery. She had heart surgery. And she was jittery before going into heart surgery. And the last thing she said, God, I've been your child all this time. I've been your child. And you've brought me this far. And to me, that's so special because she was so comfortable. It was like she had made her peace. And that's the blessing when you follow God's command and you align with him in everything you do because you feel more at peace with things, even when things are out of your control. And that's a lot of people. If you're graduating right now, you're stepping into that next step, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know what God wants me to do with my life. What's next? He's like, you got to wait a minute and let me tell you what's next. You got to pause. You got to breathe. You got to relax. And that's the same thing kind of with Jonah. Jonah was just like, I'm angry with you. How are you going to forgive wicked people? And God was like, Jonah, for real? I forgave you. You literally took off in the opposite direction of where I told you to go. He was like, and Jonah was just like, I just can't. It was almost like he couldn't just get with the fact that God is a second chance God, which is amazing because we're going to make so many mistakes. We make them right now in college. We're going to make them after college. If you get married, if you don't, fine, cool. If you go into the next phase of your job, you're going to make plenty of mistakes. You're not perfect. The problem with Jonah was he was just so angry at the compassion of God. But for me, I'm more so grateful with the compassion because the things that, the way that I felt towards God lately is a great sin. The anger I felt towards him, I shouldn't have felt. Because everything happens for a reason, whether or not we understand it. And even as you go into your professions and you go into your ministry, you have to remember your ministry just won't grow if you continue to be disobedient. Because he's just going to make you feel stuck. And you're going to want to lean forward and take that next step, but you won't be able to. And you'll be asking, why can't I move forward? And God's going to tell you literally, you're not listening to me. It's just like a parent. God's your father. You're his child. You don't listen, you disobey. It's just like when your mom told you, don't touch the hot stove. And you look, she ain't looking. Wah, you start hollering because you touched the hot stove. And she looking at, I know my mom used to look at me like, it's your fault. I told you not to do it. And it was your fault. You shouldn't have did it. And I think that's how God feels sometimes. Okay, you're being disobedient. I'm literally telling you, don't go there. Don't go to this party. Okay, don't go to this outing. Or maybe don't do this. Don't say this to this person. They don't need to know this right now. And you just walk over there, yeah, girl, Becky, and this. And she started crying. And you like, maybe I should have listened. So then God makes you stuck and makes havoc happen in your own personal life. Just like how Jonah got swallowed up by the great fish, you'll get swallowed, not literally by a great fish, but by life. You may become broke. Your friends may all leave you. You may break up with that boyfriend, girlfriend you have. You may get kicked off the team. That hits a nerve. Or even you may have to leave school. And some people's like, leaving school, that's good, because right now school is, over my head, ready to be done anyway. But it's not always a good thing to be stripped of everything, because then you feel alone in everything you're not supposed to be. Because when you get into that path of aligning with God, you're going to need that support system. Because a lot of people are going to pull on you, depend on you, and ask you to be that leader that you're called to be. But if you can't do that because you're disobedient, you can't tell someone else to do something when you don't do it yourself. Literally. I can't tell someone I need to pray for you and then I go turn my back and talk about them the same way. It just doesn't work like that. And I guess I really just want to leave you guys with understanding that we are all Jonahs in here some way, somehow. We all have turned away from what God has called us to be. We all have disobeyed him. We all have been disobedient children. It's what you choose to do next after you disobey. Do you choose to become angry? Do you choose to not listen? Do you choose to just say, forget it? I'm just going to stand here and stay still. But just remember, when you standing still, that don't mean your friend's standing still. You may be stuck, but they moving on to the next phase. It's like college. You don't pass that class. That don't mean your friend didn't pass. They going on to the next class, and you still left behind. And everyone's just like, well, it's okay. I'll get it together tomorrow. Then tomorrow's come, you're still the same. I get it together in a month. It's still the same. I get it together next month, and it's still the same. And eventually you're going to have to ask yourself, okay, who is the problem? Is it me or is it you? It's you. It's you. It's okay. It's more likely you. Because, sorry. Oh, I had a moment. It's just hard. It's hard to be obedient because of our human nature. It's hard to follow what God wants us to do because most of the time it's not what we want to do. Like for me coming to college, I never thought ministry would be anything I wanted to do. I was like, nope. I'll go to church, praise the Lord, read my Bible, pray, amen, thank you, I'm out. Now I've had a change of heart being here because now I'm like, oh, okay, I can see myself caring for these children. Now I'm, as some people say, I'm more nicer. I have more compassion. I'm more loving, which I've always been. I think I just had a harder shell. And once you start to walk with God in that path with him and you start to listen and obey, a lot of things become easier. Those classes may become easier. Those decision-making may become easier for you. But as long as you continue to be disobedient, your life is going to be very difficult. Like my parents and grandparents always told me, a disobedient child never lives out their days. Your days are numbered on earth. So the more and more you disobey, God was like, okay, all right, knock one off. You waiting? Knock one off. You still don't want to, dang, you just hard here. You still don't want to listen. Knock another one off. Okay, I'm going to keep you stuck. You don't want to listen? Okay, that bill not going to get paid. Shut that phone off. That's bad for us because we live off technology. Oh, you didn't pay your bill? Take a laptop. You want to be disobedient? Okay, basketball's gone. You want to be disobedient? School's gone. You want to be disobedient? You lose your grandparents. You want to be disobedient? You lose your aunt. Okay, keep listening to me. Family's disobedient? Okay, y'all going to be stuck. Y'all going to be mad at each other every day because y'all just won't listen. So obedience is very important, y'all. It's hard, but it's very important for us to continue to progress in our life. And if we don't do it, we'll always be stuck in that seek part like hide and seek. Everyone be looking, and you'll never be found. But let's pray. All right. Dear God, thank you for this day. Thank you for bringing us here. Thank you for your word. Thank you for everything you do. I ask you to be with all the students here in this crazy month of April and just to give us the strength to continue and finish strong. And just thank you for another day to spend in your word. Amen.